Hey, everybody. Let's talk about another model for having difficult conversations. And this one comes from the organization Braver Angels. I want to start by saying if you don't know Braver Angels, if you haven't experienced them before, they are definitely something that you should check out. Their entire mission is about helping people to have conversations across the political divide in a way that is mutually respectful and involves listening and disagreeing, but disagreeing accurately, like getting the assumptions out of the way. They do some really powerful work, and you can just look them up online. Braver Angels is what they're called. This particular conversation model is intended for moments when we're with people that we agree with. So the last couple I've talked to you about have been conversations I'm having with someone that I disagree with. This is when I'm surrounded by people who, like, we're on the same side about things. There are some things that happen sometimes when we're having conversations with people we agree with that become unhealthy, because it's like we're sitting in our little bubble and we're talking and we're talking and we're talking and we're fueling this sort of otherizing and dehumanizing and extremism in a way that stops being helpful. So I want to talk to you about some of what we might listen for, because I don't know about you, but I've had moments when I feel kind of vaguely uncomfortable in a conversation with people that I agree with, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is that's bugging me. So these are some patterns that you might be able to listen to. Braver Angels says the four horsemen of polarization are stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, and contempt. So stereotyping, that's when I'm making assumptions about another group of people and saying they're all the same and they all believe or do this particular thing. Dismissing is when I say that it's just not even worth considering somebody else's point of view. And ridiculing is when I consider the other point of view, but only for the purpose of making fun of it. And then contempt, a friend of mine once defined the word contempt as a combination of hatred and disgust, which I think is a really good term for that particular feeling. So what do I do if I hear stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, or contempt? Because if I just come out and say to my friends, hey, I think you're ridiculing and that's not cool, sometimes that's going to result in them coming back at me rather than me being able to successfully interrupt this pattern. So I want to look at, phrases like, I wonder whether it's more complicated. So we're talking about a thing and we're saying that the other side's point of view is ridiculous. I wonder if it's more complicated. This second one is a really good one. I agree with you, but I think they might have a point too. So I'm starting by saying, I agree with you. I'm kind of disarming the flashback that might come at me by starting by acknowledging that we're actually in agreement on the point that we're talking about. This third one, I'm not sure we always do this well either. It's a really good interrupter because it's turning it back on me. Like, I acknowledge the other side is not doing that very well. I'm not sure we do it very well either. And then the last phrase, I don't know whether this conversation is helping us. So it's just a pause and a reflection of, is this productive? Is it actually helping at this point? Strengths of this model. I'll stop and talk about that for a second. So when we're talking about sitting around with people that we agree with, all of us have moments when we want to get some healthy frustration off our chest. That's a totally normal thing. We sit around, we vent, we talk about stuff, and it's a social bonding experience, and also sometimes it's good for us. But when we're hearing these four patterns, the stereotyping, dismissing, ridiculing, and contempt, that's the point when the healthy frustration is starting to become poisonous. In other words, the feelings that we're having and the venting that we're doing are they're crossing beyond I'm frustrated by this situation and crossing into those other people are just not completely worth human. They're not human. They're not worth considering. They're not worth thinking about. And that's the kind of dehumanizing and otherizing patterns that can make violence possible if we let it keep going long enough. So this four horsemen of polarization is a tool that helps us to interrupt that. It also gives us really concrete phrases that we can use to interrupt those patterns gently. So instead of just going at my friends, I can kind of calmly intercept. Humor can also work really well for that if that's the kind of friend group that you have, if that's an easier way than the serious approach that this gives. But limitations of this model. For one thing, it only works if we use it. A lot of us, I think, sit around and we get into these mutual venting sessions and we participate, or maybe we sit quietly, partly because we're not sure we want to rock the boat. And that's because we can feel vulnerable in our own tribe. I'm saying I'm not sure we do this very well either, or I wonder if it's a more complicated situation. And I can be afraid that that's going to result in backlash. And so the biggest limitation of this particular model is you actually have to use it and you have to apply it consistently. And that can be a tricky thing to do sometimes. So that's the form of horsemen of polarization. It comes from Braver Angels. And the next time that we talk, I'm going to give you a resource, which is also from Braver Angels, called the Braver Angels Trustworthy Elections Report. It is so cool. That's next time.